Today on the show, we're snorting cocaine and banging the Swordmaster.
Oh. Yeah.
You weren't ready for the sound effects.
I was not. Could you tell? It was exciting, though. We're going full audio drama. We're going to talk about
That's right.
banging with full sound effects.
Real sound effects.
Nothing simulated here, folks.
Nope.
Welcome to Gom Jabbar, your guide to the iconic world of Dune. We'll be exploring the themes, philosophies, and characters found in the sandy depths of this vast universe, from Frank Herbert's groundbreaking novels to the adaptations on film and TV. My name is Leo.
And my name's Abu.
Oh, and today on the show, we're joined by a very special guest.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Thanks for having me on the episode. I was waiting for my cue.
Yes, welcome, Quinn, Ideas of Ice and Fire himself. How are you doing today?
I'm so excited. That Dune Prophecy is finally here and that we all get to see what it's all about. And I'm so excited to talk about it.
Oh,
yeah.
Same. And we're so glad for you to be here with us. But before we get into it, let's take care of our housekeeping, Abu. And first up, spoiler warning. What are we working with today?
Okay, folks. Here's what you got to make sure you've done before you listen to today's episode. Today's conversation will contain spoilers for the first Dune book. Make sure you read it. For both Denis Villeneuve films, Part 1 and Part 2, make sure you watch them.
Mm-hmm.
And Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson's prequel Dune book called Sisterhood of Dune.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to be spoiled for any of those things, go watch or read those first and then listen to the episode later.
And, of course, a huge, huge shout-out to our Kwisatz Haderach level patrons, Rob Silver, Daniel Dion, Jonathan Lambert, and C.R. Spruill. Folks, we are surrounded by vipers.
Indeed.
This is a den of vipers. The only light in the darkness, the only salvation from RFL is your loving embrace, your loving arms, the support that you give through your contributions on Patreon. So thank you. A million times thank you. And of course, our thank you extends to all of our patrons and all of our listeners as well.
That's right. And hey, something new. Many of you have asked us for this. We now have a way for you to support us with a one-time tip.
Whoa.
If you don't have the means right now to become a monthly supporter on Patreon, you can still show your appreciation by buying us a spiced coffee. Check out that brand new link in the show notes below. It's a way for you to say thank you without having to commit to another subscription, which we totally get. We all got subscription fatigue these days. Okay, with the housekeeping out of the way, folks, here is the game plan for today's episode. Quinn will be joining us for a conversation about Dune Prophecy Season 1, Episode 1. We'll start the episode with a rapid-fire summary of the first episode of Dune Prophecy. We're assuming you've watched it already, so we're not going to get too in-depth. Then we're going to each dive into our takeaways from the show, what we thought of it, some big ideas and themes that we picked up on that we want to pick apart a little further. And then finally, we will wrap up today's episode by pointing out some of those fun little lore Easter eggs and Dune goodies that you might have missed that stood out to us. So all of that is coming up in just a bit, but let's take a quick break. Don't go anywhere, folks. We will be back with Dune Prophecy, Episode 1, right after this.
Welcome back, everybody. Oh, hope you're ready to talk about Episode 1 of Prophecy. The first episode, let's talk about what happens in it. And it starts off with this monumental task. We're catching up the viewer. We're introducing them to some basic lore and history, which it does in the opening flashback to young Valia Harkonnen's come up in the Sisterhood.
Right.
Now, of course, we are introduced to the idea of this Terminator-style giant robots, this war against thinking machines, setting up the basic principles of the Butlerian jihad, which come into play a little bit later. We see the rift within the Sisterhood between Rakella supporters like Valia, who want to lean into the breeding plan, let's make better rulers, and growing the Sisterhood, whatever it takes to do that, versus Dorothea, who has a little faction they seem to be more like religiously motivated. They're more committed to their ideals and morality. Nevertheless, in a dramatic confrontation, Valia, Dorothea, who's going to be the new head of the Sisterhood?
Yeah.
Well, Valia whips out the voice,
Hello.
something she's invented, and she murders Dorothea when Dorothea refuses to bend a knee. I will never bend a knee to you, Valia Harkonnen.
Mm-hmm.
And Valia becomes the new Mother Superior.
Right.
Valia's goal? Avoid the Tiran Arafel, a holy judgment brought on by a tyrant that Rakella foresaw, and install a sister on the Golden Lion throne as Empress, a Bene Gesserit Empress. Can you imagine?
Wow. A fun way to start the episode.
For sure.
Did you like this flashback sequence, Quinn? Did it work for you?
I think it in general worked for me because I feel like it moved on from the Brian Herbert stuff, which I feel like was a little bit tedious. So it was like, we're just going to do that real quick in like 5 minutes, and then it's 30 years later. So I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed seeing it. I enjoyed like seeing the little shot of the bullet in Jihad. I liked Raquella's vision on her deathbed of Arafel and what she said. I thought that was a nice little reference to some of the deep Dune lore that I feel like most people aren't like really privy to. So I enjoyed it for the most part. I did. I was just going to say, I'm not crazy for like the way the voice is portrayed. I'm not crazy for like that yelling stuff, and that's not really how I imagine the voice in the book, but in general, I liked it.
I see it as, first, I kind of like the idea of we are given a very rough-hewn version of the voice. This is still her figuring it out. So it's like lacks the sort of cool control that we're eventually going to get. And imagine the feeling if we see toward the end of the series, maybe an older Valia do the thing that we've seen in Villeneuve's movies where she's just like, kneel. And then it like that could be so cool.
Right. It fades to black, does that classic.
Great point.
That being said, I think there is a sort of basic disagreement between Brian Herbert's lore and what the voice is, and Frank Herbert's lore and what the voice is. And this is definitely leaning Brian Herbert.
Yes.
This is saying you are the water ripples. You're affecting the environment around you with the way that you're using your voice, and you are compelling people to do something that they would potentially never do. Something that Frank Herbert's more about. You're manipulating subtly, and you understand their motivations, and you're getting under that, and very different to just have like psychic voice control. Nevertheless,
yes,
I'm right there with you. I'm like, it was okay.
I will say the prologue worked for me as well. I agree with everything both of you have said. I, in particular, want to shout out Jessica Barden, I believe. Yeah, Jessica Barden, who played young Valia. I think she did a really good job on screen. Like, she was immediately endearing. She walked that line very well between someone who believes in their mission, but also is doing a heinous act, right? Murdering a fellow sister.
Yeah.
She really embodied the role of a Slytherin you can root for. She's no Malfoy here, but she's doing Malfoy shit. And I want to give props to her. That's a tough line to walk, I think.
Yeah. It's a great point.
Well, let's return to our summary. We then jump forward in the episode to the present day, which is 30 years later. We see a thriving sisterhood now under the rule of Valia Harkonnen as Mother Superior. And we join the sisterhood at what appears to be a pretty important inflection point in their plans that have been decades in the making. We learn that Princess Yinez, royal princess of House Corrino, is about to join them, is about to become an acolyte and come under the Bene Gesserit fold. And we know Valia's plan is to put a sister on the throne. Wow, this is maybe the closest they will ever get. Now, I want to stick on Wallach 9 for a bit. This isn't going in exact order of how the episode goes, but throughout the episode, we cut back to Wallach 9 and we see this like montage of these young sister acolytes honing their minds, honing their bodies at the school on Wallach 9, which we can now confirm is Wallach 9. Leo, you and I, during our trailer breakdown, were speculating, is this Rossuk? Is this Wallach? Which planet are we on?
Yeah.
We get confirmation this is Wallach in the episode. And while the sisters are training, we also cut back throughout the episode to Valia and her younger sister Tula, who's kind of been a close confidant these last decades with her. as they're basically laying out the premise for this show, for this episode, for the sisters' plans. They are scheming together to make sure that Princess Yanez can fully come under the Bene Gesserit fold, and their plans for this marriage, their plans for an empress on the throne, loyal to the Sisterhood, can finally happen.
Yeah. I don't know about y'all, but I like a training montage. I was hearing Eye of the Tiger in my head the whole time of the like in the blasting rain and the lying class. What did you think of that montage sequence, Quinn?
I enjoyed the montage sequence. Because this is like kind of the first time we've really seen this from the Bene Gesserit. I mean, it's kind of akin to like what we see in kind of like Chapter House or Heretics of Dune a little bit. I also enjoy the look of Wallach 9, and I think it's interesting that kind of the minimalist vibe of Wallach 9 is kind of more what the Villeneuve movies look like. So it makes me think that maybe it's like as the Bene Gesserit kind of insist themselves more upon the Empire, that maybe their styles kind of take over more, and that's why things become more minimalist as they get their claws in everything. So that was cool to see. I like seeing all the young Bene Gesserit like trainees, the acolytes, the novices, and all that. So that was cool. The interactions between Tula and her sister Valia were interesting to see. So yeah, I enjoyed it in general. I like the training montage, and I feel like getting like little glimpses of like the truthsayer training, and perhaps the weirding way, perhaps some prana bindu training happening. So I just thought it was all like cool. Like if you have read the books and you can kind of like, oh, maybe that's what they're doing there. So it was cool.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, back to our summary. Over on Seleucia Secundus, beautiful planet, by the way.
Oh,
what the heck?
So beautiful. The palace set.
All of the regal royal sets, so beautiful.
Yes.
I like what they were doing they were using a lot of really intense depth of field, which I realize like helps keep things a little bit vague.
Right.
Down set a little bit, but still worked for me. Looked great. And politics, as always, are politicking. Emperor Corrino negotiates with the Duke of House Ricchese.
Ricchese?
I know. That's how they said it in the show.
No. They said Ricchese.
Ricchese, yeah. It's Ricchese, right? I've always said Ricchese.
I've always said Ricchese.
Ricchese.
Yeah, that's how we've always said it.
You know what?
The TV show went with Ricchese.
I don't know where the Ricchese comes
Ricchese.
It's with a vodka sauce. It's really delicious. Yeah,
sounds delicious.
So I think we just assert it's going to be House Ricchese. So House Ricchese, the Duke of House Ricchese, is negotiating with the Emperor, and basically we see also the Princess. Yanez,
yeah.
Princess Yanez is clearly DTF, her swordmaster, Kieran Atreides. Now, planned negotiations around her wedding to the heir of House Ricchese are somewhat interrupted, not exactly, by the arrival of Desmond Hart, a legendary agent soldier who had been on Arrakis, had gone back to Arrakis many, many times, and a surprise survivor of a crazy attack on Arrakis, who arrives and delivers some troubling reports from the sole location where you can get spice. Word on the street is Fremen aren't the only threat to spice operations. There is a larger insurrection afoot. So there is, within the Landsraad, houses are getting out of control. Someone actually stole spice from the Emperor. Crazy.
Yeah.
The Emperor, this is bad timing. The Emperor doesn't really have time to handle this because right now he's got to put on this fucking wedding.
Yeah.
Against his
Did anyone else love that he was like, we're throwing a party tomorrow. You want a party?
Yeah.
You want a party? My daughter, she's getting married. and Desmond's like, I'm telling you about a conspiracy. You're about to lose a wreck. What?
It's so funny because it's clear that Javico has no idea how to handle this like legendary soldier because he's like, oh, you're alive. Well, surely you want to retire now. And he's like, no, I want to be stationed here. And he's like, probably we can figure that out. Party time? Drink? Shots? Do you want to do shots? What do soldiers do?
Yeah. It is interesting. I mean, like, I am waiting to see how the Emperor comes into his own, because he seems a little aloof and confused this whole first episode.
He's being manipulated by everyone.
Yeah.
Certainly.
I kind of love that.
Sorry to interrupt, Leo.
No, but I think that's a great point, and I kind of love that. Like, the Emperor, every scene, he's just like, you seem like you have ideas. What are your ideas? Which is so Salvador Corrino coded from Sisterhood of Dune. Like, it's so, I need someone else to give me ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I think that's also, like, this is also the byproduct of decades of planning and manipulation. We are seeing a weakened emperor who relies on his wife first, and then when the Kasha is brought into his service, now he's like panicking because she's not going to be at the party.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's
When's
a party, bro.
When is she going to be back, babe?
She needs to tell me how many shots to do. I don't know how many shots to do without her. So for sure, I kind of loved that portrayal of the, like, we said the same thing about Walken as the Emperor in Part 2, Villeneuve Part 2.
Mm-hmm.
Nevertheless, as I mentioned, his wife doesn't love all this stuff that's going on. They have some tension between them. And he has to put on this crazy wedding between his beloved daughter and this child from House Requeze. Partially because he needs the military support from House Requeze in order to get Arrakis under control.
Right.
Now, the wedding is extravagant. It involves a pomegranate feeding ceremony, complete with little face curtain maneuvering. After the pomegranate ceremony feeding thing, we have this kind of cute moment between Yanez and what is his name? I'm bad with the names still. I'll get better, I promise.
Pruitt.
Mm-hmm.
The most, like, uppity wasp fucking name you've ever heard.
Pruitt.
It's okay. I'm sure he'll be around for many, many episodes. So Pruitt reveals his Robo-Gecko toy. It's kind of a cute moment between them where she's like, come on, like you can trust me. And then he shows her his little, like, Optimus Prime cyber gecko.
Right. And she's like, if you ever show me that again, I will kill you. He's
that
never
was
gonna
such
trust
a good
you
moment.
again.
I'll stab you myself, you little shit, she says.
Which I think a really telling moment, right? Like, the leopard gecko, the mechanical gecko scene happens. Pruitt ruins the ceremony. The Emperor has to kind of be like, okay, everybody, let's just pretend that didn't happen and keep partying. Shots, anyone? But I think the really telling scene was right after, like you're saying, Quinn, when Princess Yanez is like, if you ever do that shit again, I will stab you myself, you little fucking twerp.
Yeah.
And that, to me, reveals that her being nice, just like 5 minutes earlier, was all part of the manipulation as well.
Totally.
Like, Princess Yanez is playing 4D chess here.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see her arrive and thrive at the Sisterhood, because she's built for it. She's already ready to manipulate.
Yeah. I'll also say, I get the same vibe from her mom, right? Because her mother, Empress Natalia, is on to the Bene Gesserit. She's like, yes, they've arranged for this wedding. I'm sure they're going to love that they have enough time to get their hooks in Princess Yanez and then manipulate through her the heir to the throne. So I like that she's smart. She's onto it. She's, like, crafty and whatever. And then in her conversation with Princess Yanez, Yanez is like, Mom, you're not the only one who can strategy. You're not the only one who can plot and negotiate and plan. So I'm here for it. It really seems like Yanez is an active agent and not just a pawn who's being moved around. So anyway, that moment's excellent. And to your point, Abu, I think that is exactly what we're seeing, is that she was manipulating this child and kind of, like, playing the part she needed to. And then she's like, by the way, that doesn't fly. Don't do it again.
Yeah. A really cool moment.
Now, after the wedding ceremony, the Emperor is standing alarmingly close to the edge of a cliff, just way too close to the edge of a cliff, and Desmond walks up behind him. You okay? You good, guy? Like, you doing all right? And in this follow-up scene, Desmond kind of worms his way into the ear of the Emperor, hinting at hidden dangers among the closest advisors. Cough, which is cough.
I've got so many theories about Desmond and who he is.
Oh, yeah?
I don't know when we're going to get to that, but yeah.
Oh, well, let me finish up the summary. I got one more bullet point here, and then I would love to hear your theories, Quinn.
Want to hear?
Well, let's round out this episode. To quickly summarize here, the episode ends with Princess Inez and her hottie McHottie fucking half-brother.
God, he's
What's his
so
name?
hot. Constantine
Constantine
It's the only
Corrino.
name I remember.
They both go to the club where they're all literally fam. They're actually fam. And they, do some drugs, which I think it's just cocaine. It's just an unnamed white powder. Yeah. No, they don't call it anything like Alaka drug or Samuta or anything like drugs we know from the Dune universe. So my headcanon is they're straight up snorting cocaine. Princess Inez goes to the club. It's she's not going to be on the planet for long. She's going to grad school, so she bangs Kieran Atreides.
Yeah,
another hottie McHottie. The show is full of hotties.
Yeah, true.
The Emperor also wakes up. He walks over to his cool hologram messaging soundproof room where he also records his podcast, and he watches a hologram of a Fremen attack on a spice harvester. Worm approaching, a Fremen falling to his knees, and this is the attack that Desmond himself survived. So he sees proof of that.
So, is that a Fremen who falls to his knees, or is that Desmond?
I was wondering the same thing, because the way he was looking at it was like, why would he be shocked that a Fremen died like that? But I was like, if it's Desmond, that look makes perfect sense, and I couldn't really tell. Need to go back and look at it.
The resolution on the little hologram was not quite good enough to be 100% sure, but the way that it was framed, I think this is Desmond leaving for the Emperor. This moment that Desmond was basically consumed by a worm, but then came out, clawed his way out of the sand, and survived.
Yeah, I think you guys are right. My instant thought was, Fremen called a thumper, sacrificing himself with the worm in a religious act,
Sure, yeah.
But I think you guys have convinced me. Well, speaking of Desmond, in the closing scene of this first episode, Desmond speaks to Pruitt late at night in the hallway. He says some super cryptic stuff that you should never be talking to a child about, but it doesn't matter because Pruitt is not long for this world. We learn that Desmond has some sort of psychic burn you magic power. And poor Pruitt burns alive as Desmond uses his power on him. At the same time, we cut to Wallach 9, where Sister Kasha, who had been visiting back from Seleucia, also suddenly starts burning and rushes out screaming. Other sisters arrive. Valia herself arrives and falls to her knees, watching the horror of a sister burn. And she thinks back to Raquela's words to her.
Yeah.
The burning truth.
You will see the burning truth. And she sees this as sort of a prophetic vision, falling in line with the prophecy that Raquela had told her. And that's the end of the first episode. All right, Quinn, well, let's zoom out.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what your takeaways from this first episode are. Big picture thoughts about prophecy, ideas you want to pick apart, things that stood out to you. Talk to us.
Okay, well, I guess let's start with Desmond Hart.
Yeah.
I think that he did die. And I think he's a Gola, potentially. I think he's an early Tleilaxu Gola. I think we're in the middle of a Tleilaxu Ixian plot. And what we're seeing with the burning is Ixian technology. I think it's Ixian technology. And,
God.
The reason that I think that, I grew up very religious in the South. And when I first read God After Dune, I saw the Arafel quote. It's a Hebrew word that means it references the obscurity of God, the things about God that are unknowable. But if you look at the King James Bible quote, I'm just going to read it for you guys, right? The Lord,
please do.
I have it pulled, yeah. The Lord reigneth.
Oh, you don't have it memorized?
The Lord reigneth, let the earth rejoice, let the multitude of isles be glad thereof, clouds and darkness round about him. That's the cloud darkness of holy judgment. Righteousness and judgment are the habitation of his throne. And here's the doozy. Here's what I didn't scream at until I saw this episode and then I had to go back and look. A fire goeth before him, and burneth up his enemies round about. His lightnings enlightened the world, the earth saw and trembled. The hills melted like wax at the presence of the Lord. At the presence of the Lord, the whole earth, the heavens declare his righteousness. And all the people see his glory, confounded by that they serve graven images, that boast themselves of idols. Worship him, all ye gods.
Wow.
Oh, my God.
To me, that says something. The fact that his enemies burneth up before him, and he's vaguely referencing some religious figure. I think we're in the middle of a Tleilaxu Ixian plot, and Desmond Hart's Gola has been roped up into it. That is my theory, and I'm sticking to it.
That's such a bold theory, because I want that to happen. It's a lot to introduce, though, because we haven't even met Tleilaxu anywhere in recent adaptations, so you'd have to introduce them, but good lord.
They've also never said the Tyrant or mentioned Arafel, which is super out there and obscure. That's way out there.
That's true. There's some deep cuts in this episode.
Oh my god.
The other things that I really liked about the episode is I just love seeing the way the Bene Gesserit operate. I love seeing that at any point in time. The scene with Duke Reaches, when he's talking to Emperor Corrino, and they both have a truthsayer, and they think that the truthsayers are advising them. But really, these women are having their own secret conversation, and they're like, yeah, my Duke aims for Arrakis, but we need this marriage. We'll deal with him later. It's so almost cute. To see them just doing their thing. And and it made me think that I'm really happy that this show did the skip it did that 30-year jump, because I don't want to see the Bene Gesserit before they're badass. I don't want to see them before they're manipulating everybody. I want to see them when they're giving it to us. So I enjoyed that, and I loved the kind of the composition of the shot. When that shot, they're both on the side and you see the water, it looked really cool. I loved the decadence of Seleucus Secundus. Of course, we're getting a version of Seleucus Secundus that's 10,000 years before what we see in the main Dune series. So it's before it's a prison planet. So that was nice to see. In general, I liked the episode. The one thing about the episode that I was like, this could have been on the cutting room floor, was the bar scene. I didn't care for it. I was like, this could have... I'm just tired of bars in sci-fi stuff.
Yeah.
Blade Runner, Star Wars, we needed it in every... I don't want to see a bar scene. So, but in general, I liked the show. I liked the look of it. I liked the actors. I liked it for its references to more obscure Dune stuff. And I liked the politics, and I'm curious to see where it goes from here. And what it says about this whole Arafel thing and the burning truth, and what Desmond Hart actually comes out to be. So I'm optimistic at this point.
Yeah. On the same lines of what you're saying, I think seeing those two truthsayers discussing, we made this happen, and this is how we're going to move forward, it also cast into almost a comedic light all of the braggadociousness of the two guys, of the Duke and the Emperor, being like, he's trying to make a fool out of me, and he's a viper, and she's like, he's just a guy, he's just a man, calm down, chill. It's so funny to really, it's showing and telling everything. And I know, Abu, you and I talked about this in our immediate after
when we FaceTimed right after watching it.
When we FaceTimed, we talked about it. It is a little on the heavy-handed side, because we see multiple shots that are very and then they look at each other and they nod, and then they look at, and then it's they do the hand sign, and then they
hand signals,
nod, and there's maybe one shot too many of them nodding at each other.
Yeah,
we get it, but I loved it, and I think that was one of my favorite scenes of the show, just because it is so well representing what the Bene Gesserit do best, which is manipulating from the shadows.
Yeah, it situates the Bene Gesserit in the context of not only this story, but the universe, in the Dune universe, in a very tight, entertaining, 5-minute scene. I also wanted to agree with you quickly, Quinn, that I too am sick of bar scenes. I watch a lot of sci-fi. I read a lot of sci-fi. A lot of sci-fi wants to have that psychedelic cyberpunk bar scene, and it's totally played out. I had mentioned to Leah that in particular, it also for me felt out of place in the Dune universe. It felt too contemporary. This could have been a night out in New York City in 2024. It did not feel like a night out on Seleucus Secundus 10,000 years in the future. Like we said earlier, they're just doing cocaine, they're dancing, they're smoking hookah. It's just blue instead of regular hookah. Yeah, it felt too contemporary. It felt not Dune enough. If you're going to do a bar scene, make it memorable. Make it Dune. Make it the weirdest fucking bar scene I've ever seen on TV. Then I'm in.
And I will say, for any listeners out there who disagree with that, I liked it because I think one of our biggest complaints about Villeneuve's universe is that it just didn't feel lived in. It didn't feel like there were people. We didn't see the busy bazaar scenes or the dinner scenes. And I like the idea of Corrino royals doing cocaine in an Uber on the way to a nightclub. Like those pieces of society, I believe, are still going to be there, 20,000 years in the future. That being said, I completely agree. It didn't feel like Dune, and I think there were some missed opportunities for set dressing. There's the soldier warrior with the eyes of a bat.
I noticed that as well.
The little inhalers, the smoke inhalers, I was thinking maybe spice melange gas, like what the navigators are immersed in. Because there's that scene where she kind of blows out the smoke and he inhales it. And it almost looked like the same sort of orangish, sparkly effect that they did in the scenes in like Paul Atreides on Arrakis, breathing in the spice in the air. So I'm like, cool, but you need to really draw more attention to that, because otherwise, you're right, it does look like some nightclubs I've seen in New York today. And at that point, it's like, come on, I don't know what the answer is. And I know, Abu, you and I talked about this. I don't know what the answer is, because this is right after post-technology eradication. So technology is still going to be very primitive, according to 20,000 years from now. Dune already doesn't have a lot of the hollow junk and the space stuff. So, a lived-in bar tavern might actually kind of just be a bar tavern that we imagine today. But again, that's why you have concept artists, and that's why you have people to do that sort of hard work of how do you make it feel like Dune. And I feel like that was, I completely agree that was missed a little bit. I enjoyed it though. I like a sexy bar scene.
If you gave me several snapshots of that scene, there would be almost nothing in them to indicate that it was Dune, except for the one girl with the eyes of a bod.
Yeah, exactly.
What is she even doing there?
Yeah.
Also that, why are you here? But it seemed like she knew the Atreides.
I have a theory about her that I'll talk about later. I think she's spice addicted. I think she's just a spice addicted noble. So she has the eyes of a bat because she's spice addicted. And I think that's a cool bit of lore world building, that it's not just Fremen. But we'll talk more about that in our minutia.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's take a quick break here. But don't go anywhere, folks, because we still have a couple of takeaways and some big themes to talk about from this episode. And then, of course, we'll be digging into some of our minutia and calling out the little lore Easter eggs in this episode. We'll be back in a minute.
Welcome back, everybody. Hope you enjoyed your break. Let's get into let's continue talking about some takeaways from this first episode of Dune Prophecy. And Abu, kick us off. What kind of takeaways, broad, big ideas did you take from this first episode of Dune Prophecy?
Okay, so the thing I wanted to talk to you both about was the opening text. Mm-hmm. The show opens up on the words, quote, "Victory is celebrated in the light, but it is won in the darkness," end quote. Mm-hmm. Which, a bit on the nose perhaps, but feels like a thesis statement for this show. A big thematic through line that we're going to see play out, I'm sure, over the next 6 episodes of the show. That phrase could practically be the Bene Gesserit mission statement on their website, BeneGesserit.org. And it's big and bold on their website. But of course, it also applies to a lot of the politicking that we see in this episode, a lot of the scheming we know that happens behind the scenes, the economic dominance of the guild, all of those things. None of that happened without underhanded tactics and shady backdoor deals. The Dune universe, as we know, is a rough place. And anyone who rises to this level of prominence, to the prominence of the guild or a great house or the Bene Gesserit, likely didn't get there without some amount of dirt and or blood on their hands.
Yeah.
And there does seem to be a bit of an inconsistency with this through line, though, in this episode, because Valia declares quite openly that her plan is to put a sister on the throne as empress. Mm-hmm. And that's not exactly operating from the shadows, operating from the darkness, as we know.
Maybe that's her misstep.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that was my thinking as well, Quinn. My gut instinct was, ooh, what? The Bene Gesserit don't do that. But I think that is perhaps the lesson the Bene Gesserit are about to learn under the rule of Valia Harkonnen is yikes, you want to avoid the limelight and you want to do what Paul observed in the Villeneuve films. Steer the politics of the Imperium from the shadows. So perhaps this is the early Bene Gesserit learning that harsh lesson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I did want to point out 10 minutes into the episode, Valia's narration points out right after she killed Dorothea, she says, quote, "I knew then the name Valia Harkonnen would forever be damned to the wrong side of history."
Yeah.
End quote. And I found it surprising that I was fully agreeing with Dorothea for the first 10 minutes. And I think we all who know the Dune universe are like, yeah, what are you doing, Valia? Terrible decision. You're going to get assassinated. That's what happens when you're the one holding the reins. But I think maybe Valia's positing that it is this sort of dark, underhanded shit that she's doing, leading the way that she knows how to lead toward what she understands as power, that allows the Bene Gesserit to become what it is 30 years later. But then maybe there needs to be a transition again, or there needs to be a new philosophy or something like that. I just thought it was interesting. Her sort of omniscient narration voice said, oh yeah, my name, Valia Harkonnen, is going to be on the wrong side of history.
Yeah.
That puts an interesting light on everything that we're about to see.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. That's a bit of a different read than I had on that line. Because I think Valia believes she knows the right path and she will do whatever it takes to get there. If that means killing sisters in her path, she will. I mean, Tula observes this, right? She's like that hardened outer shell that you value so much, that you judge others by so much.
Yeah.
That is the type of Mother Superior we have. And we know from like Heretics and Chapter House, Mother Superior mentality like very much trickles down into the rest of the sisters.
Yeah.
And so I think like this is Valia saying like, I know what has to be done. I'm going to do the dirty, underhanded, bloody shit that needs to get done to get the sisterhood to a place where I believe it needs to be. And they're going to hate me for it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that she's like, let me do some stuff and then I will let go of the reins of power and the sisterhood will go in a different direction. I think she's like, I'm setting the direction.
I'm not saying she wants that to happen. I think we have seen that it worked for 30 years.
Yeah.
30 years later, the sisterhood is bigger, it's been grown, it's working, it's succeeding. She is guiding them to success for 30 years. Undeniably. Yeah. And now I think we are going to start to see where her plan begins to fail.
Yeah.
And where her self-assurance begins to fail. Mm-hmm. And I think if you are saying history will look back on me and put me on like the wrong side of history, that's usually with the knowledge of how things turned out. And if you say, oh, we look back and the ends justify the means, that's different than saying I was on the wrong side of history. So I think we're actually in agreement.
Yeah, but we might be approaching the same idea from two directions. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
It was just an interesting bit of self-awareness that I think will be interesting to see if we see that pivot in her perception of herself by the end of the series. I think
because is the voiceover from the future, or is that like present day Valia thinking that? It's a little unclear. Right.
I think that her sentiment might echo like the feeling of the God Emperor, that like I'm doing this and they're still going to hate me for it, but I have to do it.
Yeah,
that's how she sees
certainly.
It. And also to that the other opening line, like what holds more truth, history or prophecy? I think it's very telling because like history can be manipulated in all sorts of ways, or at least history is all perception. Right?
Yes.
And I feel like a prophecy could be truer than history. Like if there's a group of suffering people and a prophet comes and say, one day someone will liberate you, that might be true. And it probably is true at some point in the history.
Yeah.
In the future, So, yeah.
Yeah. Lisa and Al Gaib.
Yeah.
That's right. That's a great point, Quinn.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point.
So actually I had to dig into my takeaway here. This idea of victory is won in the shadows by doing dark, grimy, underhanded things. Mm-hmm. I'm curious what you guys think of this thematic idea. Of course, the show is going to explore it, I'm sure, over the course of the next few episodes. But sort of in a larger sense, maybe even outside the context of Dune, what do you guys think? Does incredible fame and wealth and power require one to do evil deeds in the darkness, right? Backdoor deals, underhanded stuff. Or do you guys believe there is an ethical way to achieve a certain level of success, the type of success perhaps that a great house or a guild member or a sister is looking to achieve.
Potentially, but I feel like it would be very, very difficult to like achieve that level of power and like wealth. I think it's very difficult to do that ethically. So I don't, if you ask me if I think it can be achieved ethically, the answer has to be that I don't fully know. I know that a lot of times on the way, maybe you start off ethically, but you're corrupted. I mean, Frank Herbert says that, what was it? The power attracts the corruptible?
The corruptible. Yes.
Yeah. So the people that are the most willing to do that and the most that succeed the best at it are usually the wrong people. The people that shouldn't have the power be leading.
Yeah. Or like you see characters like Duke Leto, very honorable, very like he has propagandists and stuff, but generally he's still living by kind of an ethical code.
Yeah.
And yet he ends up being kind of killed by it.
It's very difficult.
Or his grip on power is then wrested away from him by other people who are doing backdoor deals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are forces against one who might approach things that way.
Right. His charisma and the amount of loyalty he brings in from his people actually puts a target on his back by folks like Harkonnens, Corrinos, other great houses. And the system within which someone as honorable as Duke Leto works still drags him down into the mud, you know?
Exactly.
And so like he might achieve a certain level of success as the head of House Atreides, but any greater ambitions, he'd have to wrestle in the mud with everyone else to achieve.
And that's why it took a figure like the god Emperor of Dune ultimately to like do it, because his main concern was humanity and not like himself.
Right.
So I feel like it's almost like Frank Herbert is saying that maybe a human can't do it. You almost need this inhuman figure to even like begin to go about leading everybody.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah. Something outside of humanity.
Yeah.
I think another kind of elephant in the room in all of this discussion is Frank himself. He talked about it with McNelly in the living room chat in like whatever that was, 72.
Great chat. Great chat.
Really fun. You can find the whole thing on YouTube. He and Willis McNelly talking, but he talked about moral versus ethical law, moral law, ethical law. And I think the idea of ethics being sort of circumstantial and by your society and all these things, like,
yeah, certainly.
I think for sure if you believe in a God who gives you an absolute right and wrong, you have an easier time than for some of us where we have to like figure out what's right and wrong. I think outside of the universe of Dune, for sure people can become famous and wealthy and can have influence handed to them if they are lucky. I think about those actors who, out of 1,000 actors, they were pulled to be the leading actor in that movie or whatever. And I don't think it's like they did something underhanded or unethical to get that role. For sure that happens, but for some people it's just luck. Mm-hmm. And then with that luck comes great wealth, fame, maybe not power, but like wealth. And wealth in a lot of ways is kind of a form of power. That being said, I do think when you accrue wealth, you accrue the ability to affect change in the world around you, there is a line that at some point you've crossed where I don't think you can really become a billionaire without being inactive in some way that is unethical. Yeah. Right?
I agree.
Back to Dune, we talk about you become the head of a great house, or you are Valia Harkonnen, and you have these truthsayers, and you have the ability to guide humanity. Regarding trolley problems, is it then unethical to not guide humanity and allow catastrophes to happen? Or is it the more ethical choice to exert the influence you can to breed better rulers who are going to be kinder to their subjects and more efficient and all those things? I think that is an interesting gray area. I think that's where this show is kind of exploring a little bit. Are the people you've killed in the shadows justified when humanity is improved by that much more, right? You've pulled the lever, the one person dies and 10 people live. I think that's an interesting question and conundrum that doesn't have a clear answer unless you have a God who just says, yes, here's the clear answer. So anyway, I'm very I don't know either. Mm-hmm. But I think beyond those instances of someone becoming powerful through luck or through chance, I think the only way to guarantee power, luck, and influence is by being willing to do things that are outside of ethical law. It's kind of my interpretation. But you posited the question, Abu. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with both of you, actually. I think I am a little bit more sure in my belief on whether or not you can achieve a certain level. You know, I think in addition to your question about ethics and where ethically you draw the line and how your culture and time and place and context often moves that line of ethics.
Sure.
I think the other question is like, there's a threshold, right?
Yeah.
In your example of an unknown up and coming actor gets an incredible new role in a hit new Dune HBO show and it makes their career and opens up endless possibilities and doors for them. You know, I don't see that as a problem, of course.
Right.
Everyone is hustling. You and I, we are all hustling in some context to become successful to some level. But I think when you get to the level of a mother superior, a great house, the head of the spacing guild monopolizing all transport, when you get to that level of power consolidation and concentration, you don't achieve that through ethical means. Like, I fully believe that, you know? I think, like, if we're talking wealth, billion, I fully agree with what you said, Leo. Like, you don't get to the capital B $billion net worth by being nice and only doing the right thing in every situation, you know?
Yeah.
So, Abu, can I get you in trouble then with your sister?
Sure.
What has Taylor Swift done?
Is she a billionaire?
Unethically.
Oh, I'm sure she's done plenty unethically.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Taylor Swift slapped my mom.
Slapped Quinn's mom, all right?
I knew it. I'd heard rumors of that.
No, certainly, you know, has she created art? Arguably, you know, I know how you feel about it, Leo. Arguably, has she created art that people value and pay money for? And has she helped many teenage girls in particular, young women through many things?
Yeah,
yes, absolutely.
Totally.
You know, she's done a great good. Does she take a private jet everywhere she goes and demolishes the environment?
Carbon footprint.
Yes, also, you know, like I think
true.
once you get to a certain level, even unintentionally, you are like doing things that are harmful to because of, again, the systems we have in place. Like, we live in a capitalist world. We live in a world where money is power, wealth is power, and the more of either you exert, the more damage you do to people who have less than.
Yeah.
And that is exponential when you get to that status of billionaire. So I truly think there is no such thing as an ethical billionaire. You didn't get there by being Mr. Goody Two-Shoes your whole life. And to your point earlier, just to kind of wrap up my thoughts, you had mentioned, Leo, that you were finding yourself agreeing with Dorothea at the start of this episode.
Yeah.
I was too. I was also like, oh my God, Valia, chill the fuck out. And let's maybe take a breather. Dorothea says, stick to your principles. Listen to her. And yes, she's a religious fanatic. There's other problems with that, of course. But I think her heart was generally in the right place. Dorothea was saying the ends do not justify any means. And we need to stick to some sort of code of morality and ethics and what we as the sisterhood believe in. And Valia said, no, fuck that. We just need to go hard in the paint and achieve our goals no matter what, no matter who we destroy along the way, even ourselves. And, I think that's a very like capitalist mindset, truthfully. You know, it's the growth at all cost mindset. It's the more mindset. Whereas Dorothea is saying, hey, maybe we need to teach ourselves to say this is enough and we're doing enough.
Dorothea said one of my favorite Dune quotes ever from the Orange Catholic Bible. Thou shalt not disfigure the soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that like really, really speaks to me, because I'm just like, don't do things that make you less of a human.
Yes. Great.
You know
point,
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, don't disfigure the soul. And I feel like every human can recite that and think about what it means.
Yeah,
Because I feel like that says a lot. So I was definitely agreeing with Dorothea on some things.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Same.
So that's sort of my takeaway. Thank you both for sharing your thoughts on that like big picture idea about power and whether or not you can accumulate lots of it in a morally and ethically sound way.
Yeah.
And, it's murky. There's nuance, as always, but it's interesting that the show is tackling a big question like this. I always enjoy this is what makes Dune great for me. Frank tackles big ideas, and I'm glad the show is also doing the same.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to hand the mic to you, Leo. What was your big takeaway that you wanted to discuss from this episode?
Well, I really enjoyed the episode. I had a blast. It feels very good. I think my only high-level complaint about the show is that the soundtrack is just like too active. There's just always music playing.
Can be overwhelming.
And if you didn't notice it or didn't bother you, I'm jealous. I was like, oh, another song. Oh, okay. Here we go. Oh, okay. Oh, and there's still music going. Okay. And it really allowed me to re-examine how much silence there was in Villeneuve's films, right? Like Paul getting ready to ride the worm and you're just hearing his breathing. It's so much silence, and that silence then makes the music that much more impactful when it comes in. So
totally.
That one kind of complaint aside, and adherence to Brian Herbert lore aside, I had such a good time. I really enjoyed it. And I think one of the themes that really jumped out at me was this idea of truth versus lies.
Yeah.
This kind of at the heart of the episode, we have this truth versus lies versus what is the truth and how do you get to it? This also feels very resonant in 2024, where a whole chunk of the planet's just like, yeah, maybe the globe is flat. And I'm like, shut up. Oh, God. But anyway, the point is, I think Frank's books are at their best when they're challenging us to re-examine the world around us. And later in the book, we have characters like Leto 2 challenging the nature of language and the limitations of articulatable language, and historians. Yeah. And like you said earlier, Quinn, history is something that you kind of agree on, and it's written by the victors. And what is that? Is that true? Who's to say?
Yeah.
And then in this episode, along the lines of Kasha's line to Javico Corrino about Desmond, quote, "His story is true, Your Majesty, or at least he believes it to be," end quote.
I loved that.
Which is such a vital distinction, because what is truth but something said with conviction and something you believe as you say it?
Yep.
Now, the Bene Gesserit, it makes sense to look at this moment in history, because this is the moment that the Bene Gesserit is really getting its purchase in the Imperium, as they make themselves indispensable as a resource for those paranoid leaders surrounded by vipers who are weaving their plans within plans. And truthsayers are those polygraph tests, basically, the technologyless polygraph tests.
Yeah.
I'm sure Variety magazine in the year 10,191 AG has celebrities standing next to, and they're going, "Do you think you're a better actor than your best friend?" And he goes, "No." And he's lying.
Right. Kasha's in the corner, like frantically hand signaling. False, 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 false.
False, false. He's lying. So it's clear to me that a big part of this series will be the Bene Gesserit kind of continuing to establish itself. Valia, whether or not they kind of land this whole Princess Yanez thing, we're going to see. And we do see orders coming in for truthsayers pretty early on in the episode, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Harkonnen denied 4 times.
She keeps denying House Harkonnen.
Yeah. Those
seems really fucked up.
Harkonnens.
Not sure why. Do we have any theories? Why do you think she's rejecting House Harkonnen?
Because she's concerned about the Sisterhood and whatever they want. If it's not part of her plan, then screw it. Maybe there's something about them where she's like, I'm not going to give them a truthsayer at this point in time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Feels very different from Valia from Sisterhood, where she's like Harkonnen above all, and in the meantime, Sisterhood. Now in Mentats of Dune, she kind of changes her tune a bit. She's like, okay, yeah.
She's changed.
And now Tula's going to handle House Harkonnen stuff. But nevertheless, felt a little different for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rejecting House Harkonnen multiple times, brutal. But House Varric wants a new truthsayer, send it to him. Great. Nevertheless, we see in the truth sense class montage throughout the episode, it is not as simple as knowing if what the person is saying is true or not. And the distinction of what does it mean to tell the truth versus telling a lie is one that I think we're going to see a lot more explored through this series, and I'm really excited for that.
Same.
Even in this first episode, we get a few different ways that the idea of truth can be undermined.
Yes.
And I thought each of these moments were exciting and fun for their own reasons.
Don't you also love the irony of the fact that the Bene Gesserit go around as truthsayers when so much of what they do is based around lying and manipulating? I've always thought that was really interesting. Yeah.
So juicy, so incredible. I loved that line, human beings rely on lies to survive. We lie to our enemies. We lie to our friends. We lie to ourselves. That is during a Bene Gesserit class where they are training to be truthsayers. Literally truthsayers.
Yeah.
She's like, lying is the best tool we have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Humanity's greatest weapon is the lie.
It's so
12-page single-spaced report on lying. Due tomorrow.
On my desk. Pop quiz.
I love the girls like taking notes too, just like
She's like, she's just writing down all lies. She's like, I came up with a new good lie. Let me write that down. Now, one of the examples that we get of truth being undermined is Javico Corrino's conversation with Empress Natalia when she throws some sass his way for worrying about Kasha's absence at the party. She's like, wow, big deal.
Yeah.
You're not going to have someone to tell you how many shots to do. What a big loss, you know? And they have this exchange. Quote, there was a time when you took my views seriously. The Imperium was stronger for it. End quote. And he responds to his wife, quote, yes, well, you and I, we remember things differently. End quote.
Yeah.
They don't really agree on what the history is and the truth of that history, right? And even later, to Desmond Hart, Emperor Javico Corrino admits, quote, Kasha's never led me astray, but I feel this wedding is wrong, end quote. So for everything that Kasha has provided, he still has that kind of gut instinct, like, no, this isn't right, and I'm not sure why.
Yeah.
I disagree with it, though. And, of course, Desmond's like, okay, cancel it. He's like, I can't.
Yeah.
If only an act of God would murder that child. I mean, get in the way of the wedding.
I already booked the hall. Halls are so expensive.
Yeah.
The wedding industry.
I am designing the wedding website right now. You know, it's a pain in the ass. Yeah. The idea that his feeling, his gut instinct is running contrary to Kasha and the sort of the truth that she represents, right? And then finally, in the Are They Lying Truth Sense 101 class, elective course, one of the acolytes determines that the prisoner in front of her, quote, her words are true, but her intent is to deceive, end quote. Which again adds a whole new dimension to all of this. Are you telling something that you know is true and you believe it to be true, but in order to mislead people, or is it truth but omitting things? Like, there are all these elements to it. It is not that simple, and yet it is purported to be this like indispensable tool that the Imperium's going to come to rely on. So to kind of wrap up this little TED Talk, I think the final piece of all of this is going back to Kasha's evaluation of Desmond Hart's story, this huge mystery of the series, Desmond Hart. Quote, his story is true, Your Majesty, or at least he believes it to be, end quote. Again, the idea of humans who lie to survive, humans who lie to their enemies, humans who lie to their friends, and humans who lie to themselves. Are they telling the truth? Well, they are telling something that they believe to be true. Maybe that started as a lie to themselves. Maybe he is not. Maybe that that memory chip has been faked and forged, and he believes this to be true, and that wasn't him. Maybe that was a Fremen. Tleilaxu. Maybe he's a Golem. Right. So in general, I think the thing that I really liked about this episode is it asked these big questions about what does it mean to speak the truth. And, of course, it is a delightful dichotomy to have the truthsayers going through lying classes to learn how to lie better.
Yeah.
It's so much fun.
It's so fun, yeah. I love this takeaway, Leo. I'm so glad you brought this up because, Quinn, to your point, like the irony of a institution that are selling themselves as truthsayers, studying lies, dealing in lies, manipulating in lies, that is so Bene Gesserit, and it makes them so compelling as an institution, and it makes for a compelling story and origin story to watch this institution grow under the rule of, this very cutthroat Mother Superior, somebody who I doubt has any hesitations about lying to get what she wants, to get things done. It's all really great stuff, and also raises like big philosophical questions about truth,
Yeah.
Is there an absolute truth? Can anyone believe in an absolute truth? Is it all just what we perceive? history is something that can be manipulated and cannot be taken as absolute truth. Is reality the same? Can a truthsayer even actually tell you the truth? How do you use that? All of these big philosophical questions are at play, and it makes for really good TV and really good characters.
Very, very interested to see where it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. I also do think that this idea of who's telling the truth, who's lying, is kind of subtly cueing, not so subtly, cueing the important players, right? Because Empress Natalia is saying, I used to be the one that you relied on for advice and truth and to speak with. And Javaco's going, well, but where's Kasha? And then Desmond Hart is going, Emperor moving forward, I'm the only one you can believe the truth from. And so we have these other players who are outside of the Bene Gesserit also laying claim to the truth and reliability, and you can depend on me to do X, Y, and Z. So yeah, I thought this was very central to the episode, and I'll be interested to see where it goes, just like you, Quinn, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's wrap up today's episode. We're going to try and wrap up all of these prophecy episodes with a new segment that we're calling Minutia. We have taken lessons from the Bene Gesserit, and we too are going to dial in our attention to minutia.
We have to put our fingers together. And our
That's right. We're going to put
dilate.
our fingers together and activate our truthsayer modes. And we're going to end the episode today on some rapid-fire lore Easter eggs that we found in this episode that we found interesting, that we want to call out.
Yeah. And the first one I wanted to call out, we talked about this a little bit in the trailer breakdown, but ye old shield belts. And I say that because 10,000 years before Villeneuve's films and Paul Atreides, naturally we expect the technology to look different over 10,000 years. And in the sparring match between Kieran Atreides and Yanez Corrino, they had shield belts with the same kind of iconic blue when protected and red when penetrated. But the shield belts themselves look sort of antique. And I thought that was really cool. It's a fun little tiny detail that is just the costume prop designers having a good time, giving us that sort of antique thing that is still very futuristic. I loved it, and I can't wait to see more things like it.
Yeah, same.
I dig it.
Another Easter egg is something we've already chatted about. Quinn, you shared that incredible quote with us. Young Valia mentions Arafel, a term that we hear quite late in the Dune saga. For people who know, you know, the word doesn't actually come up until a certain character in God Emperor of Dune mentions it, and then it kind of comes back in a big way in Heretics of Dune. If you're reading along with us on the book club, we got to that part just recently in a recent episode.
Yeah.
But in a spoiler-free way, I do want to just say that the show and the book are basically using Arafel in the same context, sort of loosely defining it within the Dune universe as this great yet vague existential threat of some sort, a reckoning in particular for the Sisterhood in this case, if they go down the wrong path. Perhaps, as we discussed earlier, the path that Valia is taking them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and to be clear, could also mean the entire ending of humanity, depending on the circumstance
existential
in
on
which
a
it's being used.
larger scale.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. So Sisterhood could end, but also humanity. So
Right.
we'll have to see.
The big scary, as I like to call it.
Yeah. The fact that they even mentioned RFL made me really happy because it just gives me like a little bit of maybe like it's crackpot hope that a God Emperor show will happen at some point in time. But we'll see. We'll see. I love the usage of RFL. Yeah. And they said Tyrann RFL, which just basically means tyrant.
Right. They
like
added
the word Tyrann is
it
just means tyrant. So it's
It's cool. Deep cut.
I'm right there with you. I'm hoping. I'm so hoping. I'm right there with you, Quinn. I would love to see a God Emperor adaptation. Children of Dune first, and then God Emperor.
Sure.
Absolutely. Now, our next little minutia that we picked up is at the beginning of Dorothea's grab for the control of the Sisterhood at Raquel's funeral. She proclaims, before her quote from the Orange Catholic Bible, she proclaims, "The mind of man is holy," which is a phrase pulled directly from the source material, Sisterhood of Dune, which I have right here next to my recording setup. Woo! Now, this is most often associated with a different character in this book. In Sisterhood of Dune by Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson, Manfred Tarando is a sort of charismatic leader sort. He's leading the fanatical Butlerians who are basically hunting down remnants of technology after this big machine war that they've all decided.
He's so annoying. Like, oh god, like so annoying. It's like you're using machines to like stop us from using machines, and it's like, what is even your threshold for what counts? Like, I never understood.
Whatever the fuck he's feeling that day.
It's so annoying.
I hate him.
The worst.
And it's like he makes Baron Harkonnen look so subtle and nuanced in comparison. He's just such a anyway. So yeah, Manfred Turando. He's not in this show, it seems like.
Good.
Thank the Lord. Thank you. But elements of his character do seem to be present in other characters. Desmond Hart does seem to have some of that, like, charismatic leader. In the trailer especially, it seems like he ends up in charge of men in black masks and sort of maybe proto-Sardaukar kind of thing or something.
I noticed that.
Also, the dissenting Bene Gesserit, who say that the breeding plan is playing God. We don't see the system that is keeping the breeding records, although from the little like chip that Valia grabs, it actually could be computer systems. So that'll be an interesting reveal if we get that. But nevertheless, it seems like Manfred as a character has been a little bit dissolved, spread across some other characters. And my lord, the mind of man is holy is said every 7 times a chapter whenever it's a like Butlerian chapter. Mm-hmm. So Dorothea in the book does kind of end up aligned with them. So it was a fun moment for anybody who's read Sisterhood of Dune. I'm sure we enjoyed hearing Sister Dorothea say the mind of man is holy. Fun little detail.
It was. Our next bit of minutia that we wanted to call out. There's a small throwaway line from the Empress when she is talking to Princess Inez about the wedding dress. She says something about the traders of Harmenthep, getting that particular article of clothing from the traders of Harmenthep. Mm-hmm. And that made my ears prick up because Harmenthep is a planet we have talked about before on this show. To refresh your memory and to share a bit of lore with y'all, Harmenthep is a planet that is located near Caladan in the same solar system. And it was actually one of the planets in the long and painful history of the Zen-Sunni Wanderers, who are the precursors of the Fremen people, who one day end up on Arrakis and become the Fremen. The Zen-Sunni were forcibly migrated by the Sardaukar to planet Harmenthep around, in the Encyclopedia timeline at least, around 6,000 years after when this show is taking place. So far into the future, Harmenthep is just Harmenthep right now. No Zen-Sunni Wanderers as far as we know. But another little fun fact, in the Dune Encyclopedia, it tells us that the planet was mysteriously destroyed about 800-ish years after the Zen-Sunni migration, so around 6,800. And there's no record in any history book of what the fuck happened there. And the planet does not exist by the time of Paul Atreides.
Wow.
Ripe ground, I think, to tell an interesting story.
Such an interesting tidbit, and also I love Dune Encyclopedia. I'm glad you mentioned it. Like, that was like my book for like a solid 3 years. I love it.
Yeah. Oh, we're big fans of the Encyclopedia here.
Huge. Yeah.
Actually, I have a couple more fun tidbits from the Encyclopedia as well. First of all, the Fremen word Salago, which refers to the bats that they use for communication in the desert, is actually derived from the ancient and now lost language of Harmenthep.
Very cool.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
Another fun fact, something we see in the Villeneuve films, because of Harmenthep's quote-unquote random magnetic field, according to the Encyclopedia, the Zen-Sunni refugees who were there for 800-ish years developed the very first paracompass, which is a tool that we see Duncan and Paul literally use in the Villeneuve film.
Yeah.
Probably like that's like paracompass 14S. It's gone through a couple of iterations by there.
This one has Siri for sure, yeah.
This one has Siri. The one that the Zen-Sunni were using probably didn't have Siri, didn't have a calculator app.
AA batteries. It was old, yeah.
Yeah, totally. Battery life was horrendous, I'm sure. But that's another bit of a little fun fact about Harmenthep. And again, Quinn, to your point, it's fun that we're getting these like really deep cut little references.
I can tell they care, and that makes me happy. I can tell they care, and that makes all the difference in the world. So
agreed.
Actually, along those lines, I'll go a little bit off script and I'll add in a bonus minutia. The whale fur line from the Harkonnen Baron is also a tip of the hat to Sisterhood of Dune, but it's also a tip of the hat to planet Lankavale, which is a very watery planet that doesn't really have a lot except for a bustling whale fur economy.
Yeah.
And whale semen, don't forget the semen.
Whale semen, have you heard about its
got benefits.
medicinal qualities?
It's crazy that was the Baron Harkonnen right there. That was Haro Harkonnen.
Baron Harkonnen, how far they grow. That's my Dune, my Arrakis, my whale semen was the original.
Like, y'all used to be way more chill, bro. What happened?
That's so funny. But yeah, it is so fun. And we were talking about this, Quinn, before this show came out. We were saying it's just so exciting to get to see more of the Dune universe and to hear more about these places that we all know and love from the books and from the Dune Encyclopedia and from all the decades of books about Dune. It is so fun to see Seleucus Secundus and to see Wallach 9 and to hear about Harmonthep and to hear about Link of Vale and to hear about these places. It's so much fun. I'm a pig in shit. Is that's the saying, right?
Yeah. You're a whale in semen.
I'm as happy as a whale in semen. So the last actual minutia that we have here in the script is the eyes of Abad. We've kind of already talked about this, but I did want to kind of circle back to it and just wrap this up. In the nightclub scene, the clearly divisive nightclub scene, a woman checks in with Kieran Atreides. Yo, you good? You're being approached by a hot woman. I think I'm jealous. You all right, Kieran?
That was jealousy.
And she has the blue within blue eyes that so far we have only seen within recent adaptations of Dune. We have only seen from Fremen and people living with the Fremen on Arrakis. Now, I bring this up because newcomers to the Dune universe might think, hey, that means that she is from Arrakis, is a Fremen. Maybe she's a Fremen warrior who's now journeying off planet. That's possible. That's for sure possible.
Right.
It does
happen. Working on
her
acting career on Seleucus Secundus, bartending on the side.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, she's an actor. That's why she's a bartender. And it does happen in Mentats of Dune. There's a few Fremen, including a Fremen woman, who get kind of enlisted to be saboteurs, and they're taken off Arrakis in a way that kind of breaks a lot of Dune canon, but it's fine. Point is, it does happen. So it's possible that she's a Fremen warrior. But another thing that people might not be aware of is that spice, the life extension drug that's found on Arrakis in its raw ore form and processed to the blue spice essence, is a drug, is a mind-altering drug. And if you are regularly taking it, you can become addicted. And one of the signs of heavy spice addiction is the eyes of Abad. Now, Fremen have it because spice is in everything on Arrakis.
The air, the soil, the food.
The air, the soil, the food. You can't get away from it. Meanwhile, the other thing that can happen, and this happens in the Dune universe, royals or high up people who are like rolling in these like partying scenes and have lots of, affluent parties, might be regularly having enough spice to become addicted themselves. So another possibility is that this is not someone tied to Arrakis. This is a warrior or a soldier or someone who just happens to use a lot of spice and thus has the eyes of Abad. So
makes sense.
Very cool to see, again, considering it was the literal one detail of Dune that we got in that whole nightclub scene. That was very cool. My headcanon is the little humidifiers that they're using are for spice essence, like gas, but no word on if that's true. Could be Samuda, could be a lack of drug, could be a few things.
Right. It could just be cocaine.
It could also be cocaine.
It's coke.
All right. Those are our minutia, our Easter eggs from this episode that we called out. If we missed any, hit us up. ComJabarPodcast@gmail.com. Hit us up in Discord. If we missed any small details, let us know.
Definitely.
That's it, though. That's it for today's conversation. Quinn, oh my goodness. Thank you so much for joining us. I love your Ixian plot theory.
Thanks for having me.
And now I'm going to be like on the lookout for it, for all the like potential little clues for it.
Well, I hope it happens. Otherwise, I'm going to feel stupid if it doesn't happen.
No. It's a good theory nonetheless, even if it doesn't happen.
If it doesn't happen, it's still such a good theory. I mean, I'm right there, dude. It's great.
I would
Very
prefer it be Ixian technology than psychic magic. So
That's a good point, and I agree. I think that would be a really cool, like if it was like nanomachines, like Richizian nanomachines or something like that.
I thought
Totally,
nanotech.
I'm game.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm game for tech over psychic powers for sure.
for sure.
Quinn, thank you so much for joining us. You've been so gracious by giving us so much of your time on this episode today. Here at the end, we want to hand the mic to you. Tell our listeners where they can find you online and what you're up to these days and what they should be looking forward to from your end of the internet.
Thanks so much again, guys. I'm in all my usual places. Quinn's Ideas on YouTube. You can find me on all the social media websites, Instagram, Threads, Twitter, Blue Sky, all those places. I make science fiction videos about science fiction books, and I am working on a documentary right now about the history of science fiction.
Wow.
It's going to drop on the channel at the end of the month.
Oh, shit.
And
cool.
that's going to be fun. So you can tune in for that. And again, thank you guys so much for having me on. I always enjoy talking to you guys. Like, you're Dune lore masters, so it's always good to like pick the brain of people that are so intimately familiar with the material. So yeah, just again, thank you guys for having me, and it's been so much fun. I'm excited.
I mean, we've said this every time you're on the show, but it's like we started our Dune journey listening to your videos and like being so obsessed with your content. So it's like that means the world. And we obviously, you know, we take this all very seriously. We know you take it all seriously. We can't wait to see your your documentary. That sounds incredible.
That's dope.
You also have a graphic novel.
I do have a graphic novel. We're hoping to like start shipping it out at the beginning of next year. It's been a long process, like making the book and getting like the artwork and getting it colored and lettered. It's such a step-by-step process making a graphic novel. But yeah, we're almost there. We're right up to the finish line. So that's awesome.
Congrats on that. Yeah. That's so cool.
Well, everyone, Quinn's Ideas everywhere. Check him out. He's awesome. He's an OG, high quality content creator.
For real. And we'll have links in the show notes too if you want to go directly to Quinn's stuff. But before we let you go, dear listener, you know the drill. Here at the end of the episode, we want to give you a couple of reminders on some ways to support Gom Jabbar and how to keep in touch with us.
Indeed. And the first and best way is to become a patron over at patreon.com/Gom Jabbar. Of course, you can also pick up some Dune-themed swag at our merch store. Those links are also in the show notes.
That's right. And we love when you say hello. We love to hear from you. So email us at gomjabbarpodcast@gmail.com. Send us your theories. Send us what you think of the show. We always value your opinion. We love getting your emails. We love getting your questions. And many of you have started just sending cute pictures of your pets, and I'm all for it. Keep doing that. gomjabbarpodcast@gmail.com is the best place to say hello.
Indeed it is.
Well, friends, there is no real ending. It's just the place where you stop the recording. But this podcast is always one step beyond logic, so help spread the word of Muad'Dib and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And be sure to check out the other shows on the Lore Party Podcast Network on loreparty.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at lore_party. You can also watch video versions of select episodes on the Lore Party YouTube channel. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, whoever controls the podcast controls the universe. We'll see you on the Golden Path.